And today I wanted to have you because you are Axum's product owner, and you will be able to tell us more about what Axum is, what you want to achieve, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure the conversation is going to be incredibly rich. And I can't actually wait to have your input just to tell more about what's going on this side.
Yeah.
But as a starter, before talking about Axum, I want to know more about you. Who is Njeri Muhia?
I
Who
love
are
it when
you?
people ask you this question. You always feel like you have to start with saying like, my name is Njeri. And I don't know why it feels like the proper start for an intro. But yes, I think the core pillars of who I am, I'm Kenyan, born and raised. So I love home. I love everything about, the East African region, Kenya specifically, my family, my roots, the chaos of Nairobi. That's definitely one thing that's about me. I feel like I tell people that I feel like I'm an artist at heart who found themselves in a different industry. So really love everything when it comes to creativity, innovation. How do we bring new things to life? And that's why I guess Axum becomes a natural home for me, because it's innovating in a space that people don't usually feel there's a lot to innovate in, but I think we're definitely going to push those limits. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's much else to me. I'm a nerd. I love all biology podcasts. Finance professional was like the beginning point in debt finance. And now I'm a product owner, which is a very interesting change of pace for me, but has been a challenge that I like to take on. So I guess in a way, that comes back to that whole thing I was talking about when it comes to creativity and innovation and trying new things. So yeah, I think that's me in a snapshot.
I love it. Thank you. Can you tell us more about, because you said you are Kenyan,
Yes.
and I would love to know because you migrated, like we didn't really mention that.
Yes.
You are also coming home or coming back home diaspora.
Yes, I
So
am.
what's your story there? When did you leave? What happened there?
Okay, yeah.
How do you feel about that part? Like your relationship to Africa from abroad and then coming back?
Yeah. I think coming back home has been one of the best decisions I've made. A lot of people thought I was a bit crazy leaving. So I've just got back. I was in London for the last 8 years of my life. And then I moved back May 2021. And really, like I mentioned, I was a finance professional. So I was working in the city, in the heart of London, and that was great in terms of the challenge of the role and all of that good stuff. But I felt that the longer I was out in London, the less connected I was to my home country. And when I did move to London at the very beginning, something that was really important to me was like transferring the knowledge and everything I learned back home. And so that journey really started with me being like, okay, before I move back home, how do I start participating in the space? And so that was kind of the genesis of my working with the diaspora, seeing if we can connect people, Kenyans in London and just Africans in general in the UK, to potential investment projects back home that were not in your traditional asset classes. And then through that, there was a baby consultancy that was born, that we would then start working with entrepreneurs on the ground, different family offices and all manner of investors. And I think it was about 2019 when I realized that there was so much that was being done back home. So in Kenya, in East Africa, Africa at large, that wasn't getting the audience that it required. People were innovating, people were changing lives, changing values, like value chains completely. And then as somebody who's connected to this home, I'm not hearing it. So I was like, okay, if I'm not hearing it from London and I wanted to hear it, who else may be interested, want to participate, grow this community, but doesn't necessarily have the platform or opportunity to do so? And so I think that was really one of the big decisions for me to come back home, was to help with that audience building, essentially. Like, how do we give the platform, no pun intended, to the people who are doing amazing, phenomenal things? So that was a story. It was a hard decision to leave a very structured financial role in London. And then obviously having been out of out of Kenya for a few years, like what has changed for me as a person within my relationships with friends, family, all of that. But now being here, I'm in love. And I think there's just so much that's coming out of the continent that is definitely needs to be seen. And so I'm happy to have come back.
I love this. Remember one of our first conversations was about telling the stories, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because we have like similar stories in that fashion, at least for the outline of it, like leaving the country, going work in the city of London.
Yes.
And then coming back home to try to make an impact. For me, it was Algeria. But what our first conversation was really, it was about Axum, which was how can we make it an opportunity to showcase what's going on in the continent and tell the story differently and contribute into this shift in the narrative instead of bringing, instead of pretending that we're bringing something, top down that would just be put on the ecosystem and just, shift the thing. Why is it important for you?
I think it's important for like a couple of reasons. Like for me personally, I think as somebody who knows why I left, like I left because of this whole narrative around go out there. That's where the opportunity is. That's where you can make money. That's where, success will be achievable. And when you tell people like, oh, you work in London, it's like, look at you go. But then when it feels just so confusing, because then you come home and you see the work that's being done on the ground, the level of innovation, the amount of talent and all of that, it just kind of feels like that particular narrative for me is something that's really important to like break down. And it feels super traditional, like that whole brain drain argument, but like from a real personal perspective, I do want to see that, when my little sister and my little brother get to that age, like home is an actual option that doesn't feel like second tier. I think that's the main thing, that we are first tier. And I think the second point is like, I don't want it to be that there's a whole narrative of like, oh, let's uplift Africa and all of that sort of Africa needs help sort of thing. And it's like, no, we do have a lot of great things happening. What we need is collaboration. And I think that distinction is something that's super important. And it's all of these nuances in our storytelling that need to be told that will have such lasting effects on countries, value chains, and people like other young people. So I think that's why it's important to me.
Oh, damn. This resonates so much. I'm going to sound cheesy, but why not?
Why not?
It's just about bringing also the awareness on how great we are.
Yes, exactly. That's what it is.
Thank you for supporting me in this. Like really being aware of it, because what hurt me like most when I came back to Algeria was that I saw this super talented youth that was convinced that going abroad was like a label of excellence, while they were so good and so curious and so innovative and no clue about how good they were. Like no clue, because we've been convinced and just thought that thought that we weren't good enough. And I don't know if it's like with Simonza from Bongo Hive, we came from all this like the youth of our countries, like we are young countries and so on and so forth. There are many theories, but in telling new stories, just showcasing how brilliant we are as people, but also how much opportunities we are able to create. And it's a matter of building the structures to hold the innovation, building the safety to be able to know all of this. So I love that you're bringing the conversation on this topic of innovation and like really making it like showcasing that it's already happening.
Definitely already happening. And I think it's just, before I can get lost in this topic, but like one thing that's so powerful for me is like when you come here and you see what innovation looks like here, it's not just changing a simple cog. It's like, basically, there's people out there that are tearing up how complete systems work and are like, why the hell not start this again and make this right? And I think that's something that is really unique to our region, because we don't necessarily have centuries of systems where everybody's like, because we said so. It's kind of like, no, we can do this better. How can we? And everybody, let's get on board to activate these sort of ideas. Yeah. Thank
you. How did you get from the city of London to Green Tech and then Axum?
Yeah.
What happened there?
I think it's the universe was working in my favor there, because how the actual origin story was, during my time as a consultant, as I was saying, I was working with both entrepreneurs as well as all manner of investors that were based outside of the African region that were trying to come in. And so I was on a call. This was now in our post-COVID era. So we were doing one of these large Zoom conferences. And so I see, a name, Eric Young, Green Tech Capital Partners. And I was like, they're an investor that focuses on Africa, based in Germany. Perfect for my consultancy. And so I literally started with like, hi, Eric. Would be great to connect in your usual sort of conference fashion that you would do. And we started to speak, and I really felt, when you're coming with the consultant mindset, you really have like your pitch and your narrative all set up. And I remember that first call was very confusing for me, because I left being like, I don't think I did what I came here to do. I feel like we just shared and like talked about all of the synergies that we had as like, individuals and organizations, things that we both had seen as opportunities within the ecosystem. And that was kind of the point at which he was just like, hey, why do this in silos? We have the same ultimate vision. Let's do this together. And so that was how I essentially came into the Green Tech family, with a specific focus on like, how do we bring Axum to life? And so, yes, I think it's just a little bit of good timing, because I do remember I was not going to actually go to that conference that day. And I was just like, why not? Like, let's just see what happens. Yeah.
So just to set the timeline of this, we're talking about last year, end of the year.
Yep, December 2020, literally. I think it was like December 3rd or something like this. So just before holiday season kicks in, you're literally trying to do your end of the year wraps. There's no, you're gearing up for Christmas. The priority thinking is, what am I doing for Christmas and New Year's? And then a whole new world opens up.
Yeah, and that was nine months ago.
Yeah.
9 months ago, 9 months. Can you tell us what is Axum? And where it was when you arrived in December? Because I think we're in September. Yeah, it was 9 months ago. We're in September 2021. If people watch this later on.
Exactly. Okay.
Like in 9 months, where do we come from? What is Axum?
So where it was 9 months ago was really there was a tech team that was kind of in the works, that started out on what we were calling MVP 1 or MVP 0, depending on which lingo that you're used to. And we had a ton of ideas that were not consolidated in one place. And it was just kind of a whole sprint on strategy. Like, all right, there's new people. We're 2 organizations are now working as individuals, coming together in service of a very large vision. So where we were 9 months ago was in a state of just like creation, like literally putting things on the board and analyzing, does this make sense? Does it not? And there were so many meetings between Eric and I and the other team members where it would be like, we've done this before. How are we having this conversation again? And it just felt like we were in this constant state of iteration on the strategy and thinking that we were never actually going to start. But here we are, 9 months later. There's a product with features that are developed. We have a community, clearly we're having this conversation and there's an audience. There are people, we have a ton of partners. And essentially what Axum is, in my own words, and not just like the branded language, is it's an investment ecosystem. We're serving the entire African investment ecosystem. But when I say that, it's not to say that we are exclusively African. The actual heart of Axum is about how do we broaden the audience and who becomes part of the African story and narrative. So we're targeting international investors who may have never really done an investment before or have dipped their toe into the pool. We're targeting all of the companies, startups and SMEs. We're talking, and also targeting the ecosystem enablers, the people who actually hold up the community of startups and keep this engine alive. And as of right now, the product aims to be a point of connection, but over time, with all of the features we're going to build, it's going to be this radical ecosystem where anybody and everybody who has a role to play within the African investment ecosystem will have a place on Axum.
Thank you. Thank you. And in 9 months, the MVP is out. So there's a beta version out there. Can you describe where we are at today in terms of product, since you are the product owner? What's coming in the next few months, team-wise also, where we are? Just the current state of the art. Where are we?
Current state of the art. So product-wise, right now, if you're an investor or a company or an ecosystem enabler, you can come and find each other on the platform. So as an investor, you can register on Axum, put in your investment thesis and see all of the companies that match that, but also still see other companies that are in the wider African ecosystem. And as an investor, you also get access to macro information that supports in your investment decision making, because I think ecosystem context is a big part of investing, and that's something that Axum looks to solve for. And that's also what the score you find on Axum. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's also another way for investors to contextualize the maturity and the place of a startup within its wider ecosystem. So that's for the investors. For this, for the companies, the startups, the SMEs, it's a great place to come on, display your company to potential partners, but not just investment partners, but also other ecosystem enablers. So eventually be able to join programs for investment readiness or business development or market entry. And for ecosystem enablers, you can connect on both sides of that equation. What's coming up on the roadmap, the next immediate feature that I think is super cool is the community piece, so that we can bring all of these players together, right? It's not just investors working in silos or startups in silos. We want all players in one place where they can convene. And it could be on specific topics. It could be investing in agri-tech and having the enablers companies and investors who are interested in that thematic in one place, or it could be regionally focused. And I think the super cool thing about that is that it takes away from these borders that we see, like just the physical borders, the digital borders. It solves for the problem of fragmentation. And hopefully what happens is that you end up in communities that you would never have been able to access in the physical space. So that's one really cool feature that's coming up next. The demo days is also something that's going to be coming up soon, which I'm also super excited for, which is, for the companies, for the investors, for the enablers. It's not just for investors to show off their portfolio companies, but anybody who has a portfolio of participants, companies, investors, this is a great place to showcase that and share that information. So those are the immediately next best features that we have coming up. But beyond that, we're going to be doing really cool things to break down how investment works in general. So co-investment features. So how do we come together and bring a co-investor in Japan with somebody in Germany, How do we create the Lego of investment? So that's one of those things that we're going to be doing, is creating a co-investment structure. We're going to make sure that all deals can be closed from end to end. So that's going to be something else that is going to be really great for the community, especially our international community, who will be coming in and may not necessarily have the wherewithal to be able to do the due diligence from wherever they're based. And so that's the other thing. We'll have service providers who can support in that investment journey. And again, not just for the investors, but also the companies as well. So these are the things that are coming on. I'll stop there on the product because I don't want to give it all away. But from a team perspective, and Sumaya, tell me to shut up if I need to, I keep talking too much, but we've grown so much. We were a core team, I would say, of 4 people. And we were working as 4 for a long time. And now, I mean, I would have to count, but we're already 10, 12 people who are all working hard in service of the Axum vision. And we're all aligned for that vision. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I joined in May, mid journey.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
The team has grown a lot. We like there's really an ecosystem within Axum around Axum. We're like growing with other people, and the priorities are also shifting because we started interacting with the enablers and the community. You mentioned the component. The way I see the platform is really, there are 2 branches. There's the community branch and the matchmaking branch. So there's a marketplace that would connect investors to founders.
Yeah.
And we have like the first investor event coming up soon. Do really like to go deep into the matchmaking part and the curation of the deals and really start the conversation. And there's the community part that just showcases, in my opinion, the backbone of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, who are the enablers, the people who are supporting the entrepreneurs from idea stage to growth, and that enable the that all of them, these actors, the one that we've been interviewing here on the virtual chat, all these people who are. Can you cut here? Nope. Yeah, I think we need some editing. So yeah, the ecosystem is growing and opportunities will be, like there's a big project cooking, right? With, especially for founders, but also for enablers, and how we're going to really create so much value for the community so that the interaction would be deep enough, and that we help strengthen the backbone of the ecosystem, and how Axum plays the role. Like the way I see the ecosystem is, like it's very large, but the important part is really that every agent of the ecosystem knows exactly its role, what role it plays, and the importance of it to be able to fulfill it in the right way. And Axum is really positioned at the fundraising stage. Can you tell us more about the niche? So fundraising for whom, at which stage, and what type of product? And when we talk, because we talk a lot about alternative financing, what type of financing are we mentioning?
Yeah, cool. I think right now the fundraising niche that we're focusing on at Axum is the early stage equity investment space, because I think that's where we've seen a lot of activity in the ecosystem. We are seeing a lot of new actors, new VCs, new angel investors. There's a lot of ecosystem growth within the equity space. And so that's become our starting point. And we're really focusing on supporting in that missing middle at the very beginning. So working with startups and SMEs that are in their first early stages of fundraising, your pre-seed, seed, pre-series A, because this is where we have seen that there's such a significant financing gap. And this is also where the ecosystem needs more support. Obviously, by the time you're getting to your series A, series B, you have all of the things in your little packet docket that will get you enough attention from institutional investors. But we need to support the startups on that journey to that point. And so that's why we started with the equity space in the early stage. But that's not this place we intend to stay in solely. We also completely understand that there's other financing instruments out there that truly work for the ecosystem. And so on the roadmap, we're probably going to explore debt, trade, also grants, what that's another financing instrument, and also seeing how we can create almost like quasi instruments or, mixed structures so that we're truly serving the ecosystem for the needs that they have, rather than just trying to replicate existing financing models that are in the world. So that's the who. So the who and the what in terms of the fundraising. But I think one thing I'd like to add is that as much as Axum right now is focusing on that fundraising need, we don't want to only be part of the journey for the ecosystem players at the point of need to fundraise. I mean, we know that fundraising is a very long process. Everything from origination to deal close takes a lot for each ecosystem partner. And so Axum will really look to serve the players across that whole journey, as opposed to just that point of matchmaking. So that's where we're starting.
That's where we're starting.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I just want to go through the problem or the challenges Axum is addressing today. How do we, like, why Axum? Why is Axum needed? Why its role is important today? Why Axum is important today for founders? And how can, like, what gap really is Axum bridging or expecting to bridge in the next few months or years?
Yeah, great question. And I think, like, the big issue, which I think, if you are within the African investment space, is knowing that there's a $1 billion financing gap. We definitely have a significant financing need within the ecosystem. But there are other players out there who are solving for the same thing. But why Axum on two fronts? One, it's too big a need that one player can fill. So we do need to take different approaches to being able to tackle the issue of getting finance to these startups, these SMEs who are doing phenomenal work. But the other thing that why Axum, and I think it's super, super important, is that our ecosystem approach, right? The power of promoting the and giving context to people who are not necessarily part of the ecosystem is something that Axum does, that adds a whole new element to what it means to invest and come into a new ecosystem, right? We're not only mapping out an ecosystem for you, we're giving you context from a macro position. You get to see the players, we're giving scoring. And essentially, when you empower the ecosystem and also use that power for the ecosystem to invite others, then we can see some acceleration in terms of the amount of capital that's flowing into our region. New actors who now have the opportunity to come and participate, either because we've given them the information or the access point. And ultimately, we really want to solve the problem of not just how much financing is required to come into the region, but how quickly can we get more people involved, and not just involved in any one way or another, but in a way that serves the ecosystem that's already existing. So, it's very bespoke to what we've already started to build.
And the channeling part, right? Because there is also, you mentioned fragmentation earlier, there's also this gap into inclusivity. There is, like, capital towards Africa is increasing and the volume is here more and more, but how, like, the way it is distributed is so unequal.
Yeah.
And the founders are benefiting from capital to today in Africa. There's like some sort of reproduction, right? Like an issue. So how are we addressing this topic of inclusivity and addressing the fragmentation problem also?
Yeah, I think we're doing this in a couple of ways. I think even just starting with our geographic coverage right now, like, who are the companies on Axum? You're not going to just see, the big 4 countries being the overwhelming majority of where the companies come from, because we do know that right now Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, that's where money is going. But if you come onto the Axum platform, you're going to see opportunities from all manner of countries. And I think we really are focused on how do we bring to the spotlight the other countries where the capital isn't flowing at the moment. And then the second way that we're doing this is by creating essentially bridges, right? Providing information around, okay, this is what's happening in Kenya, but check out Uganda. There are these other things that are happening in Rwanda, creating programs that serve have regional focus. So you can still get in the information, you can still get the investors who are interested in your core markets, let's say, but we're taking that opportunity to also promote other markets, other founders, other ways of working. And I think that's, if we build out a platform where we're not creating bias within it. So a company that's from Bamako has the same audience as a company that's from Nairobi, then we are solving for that problem of fragmentation. Because another issue of fragmentation is around the lack of information and access points, right? It's a self-fulfilling issue. The more people who come into a certain market, the more that market responds to that activity and gives the information. And so when you come onto Axum, the same information you're going to find on Kenya, the same you're going to find information on any other country. And arming investors with that knowledge and contextualizing even those ecosystems within these unknown markets or unknown sectors gives them that power to now explore more, because they don't have to rely on the chatter that's happening because of the, let's call it, the popularity of other spaces, but there's actual objective knowledge that they can tap into to use.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to go back to the question of the ecosystem, because that was the component I brought, so I'm a bit biased.
Yeah.
I brought the teams. I'm head of ecosystem at ecosystem development and community building, and how it fits with the product development part, like how it is complementary today to connect Axum to other organizations. And just to add this piece to your thinking, it was just like really acknowledging that the most powerful thing, especially in platform design strategy or platform strategy design, is really that the product or the tech product should be the translation of interactions that already exist.
Yes.
And an amplifier instead of something separate that needs to that do not exist without the right connections. So there is a framework we're working with. The framework is very clear. We know exactly how it works to build like a tech product that is uncorrelated with the needs. And we know how difficult it is to bring that to life and to make the correlation, but how are we really making the platform both physical and digital? And the digitization part is just an amplification of something that is existing. And that shows us the way to go to places we don't feel allowed to, or it is too difficult to because it's fragmented, or it's not accessible. So it's the human component is like crucial. 100%. And it comes back to what we were saying at the beginning. It's like showcasing stories, showing stories and telling stories, and like we're not inventing anything, but we're bringing a tool that digitizes all the interactions that exist, and we want to capture these interactions to make them visible and amplify them through our outreach. So if we think of Axum in terms of value proposition, our value proposition to the members of the community, the first one is outreach. Because Axum is Pan-African and connected to a global network of investors and enablers. So the impact of the outreach is really, especially in a fragmented continent, what we bring is the interactions that do not exist. Is the platform that makes people interact who were not interacting before. It's creating spaces where people meet, and it's difficult for them to meet and share around these topics in another place in such a Pan-African way, and multiply their impact through the interaction. So the platform and the tool and the product is just a multiplier. So when you bring the investor component, which is at the heart of Axum's development, is what is the current state of investment in Africa? What are the gaps and where are the gaps? And how can we come and fill them and create opportunities where the gaps are with a tool that makes, trust and transparency create trust and transparency for investment to be easier, especially for foreign investors, and also to strengthen the interactions within the ecosystems and the different African ecosystems, because we know very well there is not one ecosystem, but it's really about, interacting or creating interaction between many actors of the ecosystem.
Exactly. And I think you said, it's something that you said, like, and you say often, it's like, how do we connect to like the smallest player somewhere? And if Axum is capturing every single player who's contributing to the ecosystem, then we're actually achieving the vision of transparency and trust and collaboration, because then everybody has the ability. And I think even just with our ecosystem outreach, and I can just put this to like a personal level, right? I had been working previously as a consultant in the East African space, and it's only been through the community and ecosystem work we've been doing through Axum that I've now spoken to people in Algeria and understanding like what's happening in that space, and in Mali, and in people and Senegal and all of these other countries. And like, there's so much richness in everything that's being developed. And what if Axum can now just be able to create community where this community that's doing excellent work can collaborate and cross-pollinate essentially with this other community, then the amplification of what's happening will be crazy.
I agree. I am so convinced that the attention and the quality, the attention and the awareness we put in every interaction, like so for now the community is pretty small. It started like the first 15 members were like announced in June. Now we are around like 40 people. WhatsApp groups are around, like, French speaking and English speaking, I think we're around something like 80 or 90 enablers from all over Africa. And we interact very closely with 10 organizations. Like, when I say closely, it's like almost on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And it takes time. Like, it's really about building relationships.
Yes.
And there is both bases, like there's a human base where you build the interaction and you put in the attention and you explore options of collaboration and the connection to investors and how we're going to bring, to create opportunities for the hubs, because they're not just here to provide portfolios of companies. So how, to make this really a win-win experience for every stakeholder of the platform, including the enablers who are the backbone, of the ecosystem, etc. All of this is just so much attention to the needs of every stakeholder, and then translate it into a product.
Exactly.
And the work we're here, like, that's what a beta version is. Like, you put on the MVP on a, the prototype, you put the go-to-market, and then it starts interacting with the market. And when it starts interacting, and that's the stage of Axum, that's where we're at the moment.
That's exactly where we are. And I think we're listening, and like, we're definitely listening to literally every party. Like, the product roadmap is constantly evolving, because like you said, this is not supposed to be a siloed product that we now try to sell to the ecosystem. If Axum is in a position where we're trying to sell it to the ecosystem, then we have strayed from the fact that we're building this to amplify the existing ecosystem. So right now, like, taking all of the feedback, hearing all of this information that from our different users, it really is actually feeding back down to the most like tiny point around how the product works. Like, that color is not inclusive, somebody couldn't see it. How can we make sure that everybody who interacts with Axum, who's from our ecosystem or wants to join the ecosystem, is served by us, by the product. So it's an interesting place right now, and I think it's great to be having these conversations, because then we can now also interact with new people, get their feedback, have other people join the platform, and even not just join the platform, but just partner with. I think we've had an opportunity to explore such really very, very different, really cool partnerships that you wouldn't expect a platform to pursue. But it's from those conversations that we've now had like such unique product features emerge. And it's just like, wow.
I know. It's just like I think the most exciting part is that we have space for immersions.
Yeah.
like there is such a strong structure with what is being built with Axum in terms of product and roadmap. There is like a very strong structure legally, and all the work like for the data protection part and all like the heavy lifting is done. And then we go to the interaction, which it doesn't seem like heavy lifting, but it's the core of the product. It's what is visible. It's how we interact. Without the structure, it wouldn't exist. But the interactions are also. So I think it's a very exciting stage because we are meeting people, onboarding them, creating value for them, co-creating experiences. So there is so much space for emergence.
Yeah.
But it's also the most challenging part because there are, it's also, there are the challenges. In your opinion, what are the challenges we're at the moment and that we need to get through to really make the impact we would like Axum to have?
I think, that's a fun question. It's one of those ones that you don't want to show your cards too much for something like that. But no, to be frank, to be honest, I think one challenge that we're facing is I think the growth. I mean, like we have very organic relationships with our communities and everything, but ultimately because we're building a product that is completely responsive to the ecosystem that we're trying to serve, we need to like amplify the people and the voices and the contributors and the people who are coming onto the platform and giving us feedback. I think we're at that place where we've built, like you said, we have the structures, so we're resilient enough to now start taking on a few more people, more audience, so that we can now get to that point of acceleration. And I think that's just a natural issue with any product, any business out there. At the end of the day, technically we're a startup ourselves, so like that's definitely one challenge that we're facing. I think that's actually the key challenge that we're facing right now, beyond just the usual bumps and bruises.
It's like a startup, right? The first, we're building traction, and we are going from 0 to 1. We are at this stage where we are testing the product and bringing people on, and we need to convince, and the product needs to be good. But our value proposition needs to also be iterative and be evolutive and communicate with the users we would like to serve. So is this dynamic, and like it's scale? Are we scaling or not? It's the challenge of scale. So I think we're doing it. Like I can feel it happen.
Yes.
Because of the strength of the community, like people are convinced and there is a need and we are bridging a gap and we are responding. Like I am so convinced that the problem Axum is addressing is crucial, and the product offered and the power of the networks involved. Like the outreach is just uncommon. Like the type of outreach in terms bridging this gap. Like for me, a platform is translation of real interactions. And when you see the current ecosystem of fintech and then Axum and how it's supportive in terms of community of investors, the enablers who are already gravitating to around the startups that already were helped by green tech and green tech capital, and Axum is powered by green tech. So like it's a green tech, it's at the service of, it's a different project, but it's powered by green tech. So there is these interactions are already here, and we're just digitizing them to grow them. So I'm very confident in that the scale is happening.
Yeah, it's definitely happening. And it picks up, and it's when you have these different people registering that, you go into the team meeting and it's like, oh, whose person is that? And we're like, I don't know. And you're like, somebody found us organically, and it really just starts with one, and it's completely, and not to say that we're at one, but like, it's those moments where you can feel the scale happening in a real sense. And I think these next couple of months for Axum are going to be massive. Like by the time we're getting around to Christmas, when it'll be a full year when we started, we'll look back and be like, wow.
I think we can already say that.
Yeah, I think we can definitely say wow already.
It's December for 1 year anniversary. I think we'll have a few announcements to make.
Exactly. The Axum birthday.
Yeah, with a team of 12, as you said, it's just
Yeah.
feels good. So where would you, I think in terms of next step and impact and
Mhm.
Axum in a few years,
Yeah.
to like as to end the conversation on the vision,
Yes.
where would you see this go?
I would say, if you were to read like a newspaper, I would say a couple 5 years from now, and it's like, oh, some feature on Axum, I would love it that it says that Axum not only bridged the financing gap, but completely changed the narrative around investment into Africa. And when I say that, when I say a narrative, it's changing even how we invest, how we interact in that investment process. I think Axum becomes this point of transformation for how we access finance, the instruments we use, how the actors relate to each other, how we don't necessarily just view investment as this one point in time exercise that everybody finds quite challenging to participate in, but it's actually a very inclusive, collaborative process where you have all manner of actors involved and working towards the same sort of evolution of the space. I think that's really the from a maybe too airy fairy and not necessarily like from a product piece, but like that's essentially what I hope that Axum is doing, that we look back and it's like, what Google did for all of us, Axum did for the African investment ecosystem at large, right? That would be the dream. That's definitely the dream. And I think in terms of what's next, I really feel like this is a great time to join us in the journey. We've already got a product that's out there that's doing some hard work and we're iterating on. But in these next couple of releases, this next 6 to 12 months, it's going to be a whole new world. And I think there's a lot of us that believe in this vision. And like you said, the reason why we have a community that's thriving is because we all see where this could take us, and we just want to invite as many people on this journey to join us. And it's not just about the product. I think the biggest takeaway, it's about the ecosystem and just creating such strength, and how can we just amplify it as much as possible so that this product really works in service of this beautiful thing that's already happening.
Thank you. I feel inspired by this conversation, and I want to conclude, like, I really want to express my gratitude. Like, I'm so grateful to be working with you and to
Grateful to be working with you. Yeah, for
to,
real.
yeah, to build this together, like to really be part of this Axum adventure and be part of this team is just such a joy. It's
Yeah, it's literally it. Like, I'm so thankful, and it's literally Axum at work, right? Like, how would we have ever found each other? And we were both working hard in the same ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Both trying to see
I was never in the field. I was always at the office.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I was always, and it would have been this is actually Axum at work. This relationship, this conversation is actually Axum at work. And if people can take this away to see, like, if this is just on a Zoom call, right? Two people who would have, quite literally, I don't know where we would have, maybe our words would have collided at some sort of conference or another, but like to have engaged this deeply and to bring your ecosystem and my ecosystem and to create this super ecosystem, like, that's exactly what the product's going to do for all of us. Yeah.
Just thinking of like bringing me, when you say like your ecosystem thing, like I just feel like the UFO that arrived in.
Yeah. No, it kind of felt like that. It was like, who's Sumaya? And where did she come from? But like the happy sort of UFO where, like, like E.T. Yes, exactly.
So
cool.
Thank you, Njeri.
Thank you. This has been amazing.
Until next time, I'm sure we will have other conversation. It was very enlightening. I think having this conversation on describing what Axum is about is just the perfect way to share more about the work we're doing as a team. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.